Happy Monday, everybody, and welcome into another Fantasy Football Lessons Learned video. This time for Week 5 as we enter into Week 6, where we'll be talking through all of our critical takeaways here and information that we've gathered from this past Sunday's NFL game. So if you're new around here, drop down. Feel free to smash that subscribe button. We're closing in on 5K subscribers. Maybe we'll get there by the end of this week. That'd be awesome. We're always looking for more of you guys to join the community, hang out with us, have a good time, talk some football, and help each other win our leagues this year. So I hope you're excited for today's video. Smash that like button before we get started, and let's dive in. All right, everybody, make sure to keep your ears open as we move through today's episode. The graphics up on the screen are going to represent someone closely aligned with the talking point and statement I'm making here. However, it's not going to, cut and dry list what exactly we're talking through here. So Russell Wilson here, first and foremost, representing that I believe this time it is a bit more of a direct connection, but he is no longer a weekly must-start player. Like, he is very, very benchable at this point. And maybe some of you guys were already there, but I was someone that was a little bit more cautious to do so. I was waiting for things to get right. We've had a month of NFL experience under our belt for this season so far, however, and with more news coming out after Thursday night's game, I'm just pretty ready to get out of this situation and move forward with someone else if I can. Now, unfortunately, this is me sharing some bad luck experience on my own here. I was able to add Tua off the waivers in one of my leagues, and then I ended up starting him in weeks 3 and 4, and in both of those games, in spite of Russ, or in favor of him, rather, and in both of those games, Tua got bad health breaks, and of course, so I ended up getting totally screwed. That's one of my worst leagues so far this season, just because the quarterback play has been abysmal to this point, but basically what this comes down to is the fact that Russell Wilson is cut and dry, absolutely someone that you could even call unstartable at this point in the year. And again, I was more reluctant to get to this point than others of you were. I just thought they had to get things right here. They would smooth out the kinks in this offense. They would eventually find a way to get Jerry Jeudy the ball more. They would get Courtland Sutton those opportunities. They'd put up points. And it's just one thing after the next to this team. First and foremost, it's terrible clock management. It's Nathaniel Hackett's play calling. It's situational awareness that's so poor for this team. And then you get Javonte Williams. Terrible injury break there. Arguably their best offensive player on the football field. He goes down for the season to a terrible and unfortunate ACL tear. And now you're left with Melvin Gordon, a committee of running backs that I'm expecting to be deployed in some manner of a three-man, deployment next week, from Latavius Murray to Mike Boone. And again, leading the pack should be Melvin Gordon back there. The offensive line, Garrett Bowles, arguably their best offensive lineman, out for the season. It's just a significant, cluster F of issues that's just turning into big problems here for Russell Wilson and making his fantasy stability even more erratic and inconsistent here. The last part of this was the news after Thursday night. I started off by talking about this, and then we went in a totally different direction here, is the fact that he had a PRP injection into his shoulder for a torn lat near his right shoulder, which, key point here, is his throwing shoulder, right-handed quarterbacking from Russell Wilson. So with a significant injury to your throwing arm, it's something that he's hoping to not miss time for. This is supposed to be an anti-inflammatory injection that smoothens things up here and hopefully makes his playing process a bit less painful. But you can really see it. And, it's been something that he reportedly suffered during Week 4 against the Raiders. However, the last 2 games he's been dealing with it. And I think it was really evident. There was a play, I forget who he's throwing to. I think it was a pass up the seam, and he tried to put it on a rope, and he just couldn't. The pass was off. It veered off to the side. It didn't seem to have the heat on it that he would have liked it to. And you could tell after the throw, Russ was frustrated. So frustration is definitely the vibe that fantasy managers, Broncos fans, NFL fans in general are feeling towards Russ and this Denver offense. I just about, put myself, Bills Mafia style through a table this week when I learned that Monday Night Football, I believe it was Monday night, it's one of the primetime games this week, we get to watch Russ and the Broncos once again go out there, stink up our televisions for 3.5 hours, and then we get to come, people like me, and those of you out there that have any sort of social engagement with others, we get to all come together and complain about it, and I can't wait. So if you're new around here, join the community Discord server, and I would love to complain with you guys, and ultimately bash Russell Wilson in this offense. I really hope we can get better. In all seriousness, I'm joking there. I'm a pretty optimistic person. Maybe that's part of the reason that I was reluctant to kind of kick Russ off to the wayside here for fantasy purposes. I saw flashes of him in this offense against the Raiders in week 4, and then week 5, literally a primetime game with 7 freaking field goals and no touchdowns scored. And from that point forward, in addition to that injury news compounding the effect here, I'm out. We're moving on here. And that's our takeaway on Russell Wilson for today. Aaron Rodgers today representing the fact that I do not believe, and this is something that I started to wrap my arms around after week 4 against New England, this team does not have the juice or offensive firepower to A, put bad teams away, and B, contend with legitimate high-scoring offenses. Teams like Philadelphia on the Packers' schedule this year could get ugly if something does not change for this team. Now, I don't expect them to make a big splash move, acquire an Odell Beckham Jr. via free agency, or make a trade. That's not the nature and culture of this team. But what we're seeing is 2 weeks in a row, Green Bay being a heavy 10-point favorite against the Patriots, win by a field goal in overtime. The difference this week, 8-point favorites in London, a pseudo home game, if you will, where they basically dressed the stadium up to look like a Packers home game, although it was an overseas contest, and they lose to now the 4-1, but I still believe to be very fraudulent New York Football Giants. Now, say what you will, Daniel Jones is probably playing the best football of his career. I put that in quotation marks because it's really not a super high level of play, but Brian Daboll's using him in the right ways. Saquon Barkley has really resurged himself and found a new second wind of energy here. He's healthy, got a little bit nicked up, ended up leaving the contest and then coming back to put the nail in the coffin against Green Bay. If you watch the 32 teams in the league, and this is me getting a little bit philosophically away from fantasy football right now, but if you watch the 32 teams in the NFL, every time I see an NFL offense get into the Wildcat, every team, literally watching Red Zone, having 3 or 4 screens up in my living room at all times on Sunday afternoons, watching and consuming these games, I see a team get into the Wildcat, they run the ball, and they get 2 or 3 yards. The Packers had no answer for it. Saquon Barkley, untouched, walked into and did the Jordan jump into the end zone for the go-ahead touchdown. So completely ridiculous stuff here that we're seeing from Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers, in terms of his fantasy quarterbacking, offers little to no upside this year. The days of seeing wide-open freebie touchdown passes set up off of an elite play action game are not present anymore. He's had 16 points or fewer in every single game. Fantasy points, this is, in every single game this year. So you're not getting the layup touchdowns. If you look back at 2020 and the 2021 seasons, those things were an element in that play here where you could have one-play drives and score TDs. And maybe Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs, I swear to God, I can never say it right the first time. I am a Packer fan, full disclosure. So it's literally not like I'm just that brutally, ignorant and just being oblivious to the situation here. This man is from my team, and it's the simplest thing. I just repeatedly mess it up here. But this is something that we're seeing no longer be an impactful ability of this offense to give you those types of one-play easy drives, quick fantasy scoring, and give you that ceiling in your lineup. So for Aaron Rodgers, this is reaffirming my tiers assessment of him last week as a fringe quarterback 1. Really not someone that belongs in your lineups every week. This is a higher floor play in games when things don't go disastrously wrong, and a low ceiling play because he doesn't offer rushing upside, and he doesn't have that caliber of playmaking surrounding him to really give him the upside he needs. This is also an issue from the run game here. The last note here, I've been really long-winded on these first 2 takeaways. The rest will be quicker and more efficient, but for the run game, guys like Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, I've had some of you comment in the comment section on episodes the last couple of weeks here wondering, why am I not ranking Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon higher? You've particularly pointed to, those of you that have reached out to me, to the fact that they're these heavy favorites and expected to win these games. In my gut, as a Packer fan, consuming this team for the last, basically every year of my life that I can remember here, this team struggles in seeing the de-evolution of their offense. I knew there was no chance they could get out to these leads, sustain the ability for them to run games out late in the fourth quarter. They were playing catch-up here. Aaron Jones had to kind of play hero on the last drive of the game, and in half PPR ended with 8 fantasy points. So it is a roster-wide issue, an offensive-wide issue for this team, and the negative impacts are being felt game script-wise by all 11 men on the football field for this Packers team. Next up here, Breece Hall. This is a simple and quick one. Last week, my takeaway, Breece Hall is the man. This week, my takeaway, Breece Hall is an RB1. I've been saying this since the summer. I actually almost went there in my rest of season rankings, which came out last week. If I were to do them again today, I think Breece would be a top 12 overall player. I've been saying it since, again, the summertime, maybe even the springtime. Once he takes over this backfield as the lead option for this team, he will be a top 12 weekly lineup option in a league-winning play for those of you that took the plunge and sucked it up for the first month when he wasn't necessarily that. Now, leave that in the dust, baby. Almost 200 yards from scrimmage, 197 and a touchdown to be exact. And there's going to be people that are out here being haters on Breece Hall this week. I can already hear them typing, their fingers sticking to the keyboard as they haven't rinsed off the Cheetos from their hands yet. And you're going to have those guys saying, well, Michael Carter got 2 goal line touchdowns. Guess who else was on the field? It was the same exact play, the same diagram and structure ran each time by the Jets. It was this fluky little goofy play where you've got basically like a wishbone formation with one running back set to the right and one running back set to the left. The first time they run orbit motion, meaning Breece Hall will fly behind Zach Wilson at the snap of the ball and basically be eye candy for the defense to go, uh-oh, there goes the red zone running back, and then little sneaky Michael Carter yucks his way into the end zone and scores 6 points. The next time, flip it. So you have Breece Hall orbit motioning to the left side of the line. Everyone's like, oh no, we just saw that. What happened before? And before they knew it, Michael Carter had scored his second touchdown of the game. So for those of you that have been sticking around here on the channel, you probably know which episode you're going to see Michael Carter in this week. I have no further analysis or evaluation there needed, just a little bit of food for thought for you guys. Raheem Mostert here representing our next takeaway, that he is the running back to own and the RB1 in Miami right now. He's actually available in a good handful of leagues. He's 20% less rostered than Chase Edmonds is right now at about 88%. Mostert's rostered at 69%. Very good number there. And, got a huge boost game script wise from Teddy being out. You had Skylar Thompson come in, a guy who was in his first career NFL game. Of course, the result being they need to rely on the run game a bit more. He goes out, 18 rushes, $113, a touchdown, add some receptions on top of that. And again, Chase Edmonds' role has been decreasing every single week of the year since week 1. He was being propped up by touchdowns a few weeks ago. That seems to have fallen off here. Raheem Mostert is the name to own, the name of the game here for the Dolphins offense. And of course, until he gets nicked or injured, this is the guy you want to have. And again, go pick him up. There's an opportunity to add him in 31% of leagues still on Yahoo Fantasy. And if Tua potentially misses more time, Teddy's in concussion protocol now as well. They're going to have to continue relying on this rushing attack. Marcus Mariota today representing his offense, the Atlanta Falcons offense, which I believe the first thing that I really felt significantly wrong about here this week is the fact that I was overly optimistic on Atlanta's ability to deliver success for fantasy football pass-catching playmakers here. Now, Marcus Mariota, again, in this game, only produced, the main thing really that we were wrong about here is I had Drake London as a must start. There was a good handful of people that were saying, I'm not going to trust Drake London this week. I just don't trust Marcus Mariota. And after seeing the first few weeks of the season where Drake London has consistently been seeing 7-ish targets per game, being the alpha wide receiver one in his offense, I was ready to get to a point where I thought Drake could be that player going forward and continue converting on those opportunities. More fuel for the fire here. No Kyle Pitts in this game. I assumed, hey, more opportunities will be on his plate. He'll have the chance to make more big plays for this offense. Nope, 7 targets again this game, despite being down at one point. I believe it was 20-0, 21-0 maybe. They storm back here, score 16 unanswered points, and ultimately make this a game. I actually got a backdoor cover at Falcons plus 10.5 today, so I was pretty happy about that. But he went 4 of 7, so 4 receptions on 7 targets for 35 yards, and was clearly not someone at a starting level, even at a flex position for lineups this week. So for the struggles that Kyle Pitts has had, Drake London here the last 2 weeks, he looks to bounce back. He does have, I believe it's San Francisco coming up here, so not feeling too much better about that. Marcus did get back to work a little bit, rushing for over 60 yards this week, but for a guy who's going to complete 14 passes, we're kind of hoping that between Drake London and Kyle Pitts, they catch 14 passes. Not that you literally have 14 passes get caught by your team's receivers. So poor stuff. Marcus Mariota and this Atlanta passing offense definitely falling below my expectations. Today we've got Dameon Pierce, running back for the Houston Texans, representing my takeaway from today that yet again, another NFL season of fantasy football will be defined to an extent by rookie running backs pushing the needle for fantasy rosters. Today, notable fantasy running backs of the rookie designation that dominated and popped off for our lineups. Now, one of these players, particularly, probably two of them, were not involved in many starting lineups, but furthering my point that these are incredibly important players on draft day that you need to address or trade for early in the season while they're still getting through their roughed up bumps here and getting accustomed to their teams. Breece Hall balled out today. Like I said, a touchdown, nearly 200 yards from scrimmage. Dameon Pierce today led the charge in an upset. The Texans were underdogs by over a touchdown here. They ended up winning the game by a touchdown. I believe it was 13-6, holding Trevor Lawrence, what they call him, the prince that was promised, to just 2 field goals for the Jags offensively here. And Kenneth Walker with Rashad Penny out for the season, supposedly, or projectedly here, scoring 14 fantasy points, 8 rushes, 88 yards, and a touchdown on a 69-yard rip against a really tough opposing defense. And then Brian Robinson, I'm going to talk about him a little bit later, potentially, but you've got a situation where the production wasn't really there, but he immediately took over the opportunity share on the ground in the Washington Commanders backfield over Antonio Gibson, which was foreshadowed this preseason. And, you can see by Ron Rivera's body language how much he loves this guy. It was super awesome to see him recover and get back out there. And situationally, I think his use will be very prominent going forward. So, rookie running backs, quick note on them there. Cam Akers next up here, our 7th takeaway lessons learned from this week. Rams running backs are unstartable right now. This offensive line is so bad. I had Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson as sits this week for the sole purpose of the defensive line mismatch between the Dallas Cowboys and the offensive line of the Los Angeles Rams. And it was so poor, evident from first snap to last. Matt Stafford legitimately, he might be so sore tomorrow that he doesn't even want to play next week. He was getting crushed back there. Like, the sacks he were taking were not typical NFL sacks. He was getting smoked, steam plowed, sandwiched, buried in the backfield by countless Cowboys. Was it Dorrance Armstrong that played the game of his freaking life, strip sacking Stafford, coming out the next possession, and then DeMarcus Lawrence returned that for a touchdown. He blocks a punt and recovers it, and then you've got Iggy Zuar, I forget exactly what his name is, making sacks. Micah Parsons on one leg was out there just annihilating this team. Everyone up front for the Dallas Cowboys had themselves a Thanksgiving meal here against this LA Rams offensive line. And as a result, it's not only killing them in the passing game, it's setting them behind the sticks. They're passing on 1st and 10. They aren't running effectively. Cam Akers led this team by a mile with 13 rushes for 33 yards. That's not even 3 yards a carry. You would have had to get to 39 yards to average 3 yards per carry. And he had one good run on the day where he broke a tackle, spun out of it, and was able to make like a 12, 11-yard gain or something like that. So it wasn't a great day whatsoever. Frequently, I should have counted how many tackles for loss Cam Akers took today. Not because, I get some of you don't think he's a good running back. That is totally fine. I think that there were flashes, but he literally gets hit like half a second after he takes the handoff. The O-line is just so far below par here. In matchups like this, and last week as well, we projected the same thing against a tough, physical 49ers front. You're not doing anything back there. Henderson caught 4 passes for 30 yards as well. He's the more well-rounded, polished back. Doesn't have the same athletic explosiveness in open space. But that's the problem for Cam Akers right now. He can't find open space. He's not good at breaking tackles. And if he can't do that, there's not really much to be had here. The last thing I started touching on this is that when you get set behind the sticks here, you're taking sacks, you're turning the ball over, you can't move the football. Your defense isn't really doing you too many favors either. It's not a situation where they're really playing at an elite level to dominate offensively for you and make a contribution to the offensive side of the ball, which is something that does occur for a lot of teams out there. This is a team that this week was down 22-10 against the Dallas Cowboys against Cooper freaking Rush. I get it. He's 5-0 as a starter. He's playing well. He's doing nice things. But they can't get themselves in these holes where they have no shot at running the ball late in the game. Like, running the ball should be how you close a contest to win a game. they can't establish the run in the first quarter, let alone even let it be a viable threat in their offense in the fourth quarter, and that kills them as a team. It kills the fantasy value of these backs because Cam Akers is not a dynamic pass catcher. Darrell Henderson has been basically alienated from the run game here because they're trying. Sean McVay was calling run after run after run, and he got to a point where he had to abandon it because they were starting to fall behind in the game. They couldn't sustain drives. Their defense was getting worn out from 3 and out, 5 and out, whatever it was, short possessions. And I would honestly, I didn't look at this before recording today's episode, but I'm sure the time of possession was very skewed from Dallas to LA here for this game. Next up here, number 8, 3 more takeaways, including this one. So this would be our third to last takeaway of the week. Najee Harris, in my book, I do not believe is a top 12 or to be considered a running back 1 for the rest of this fantasy season. Now, I started to come to this realization last week when I read a comment, should I trade Breece Hall for Najee Harris? And I sat back and I thought about it for a second and I was like, you know what? Yes, I would do that. No matter what your thoughts and feelings are about the Jets offense, they scored 40 points today. Breece Hall had a 79-yard reception. He is an incredibly dynamic player. And if you want to say, well, you just answered the question there, he made one big play for 79 yards. Yeah, take that away from his 197 that he put up for the whole day. So he's doing something out there, and he's making plays. He's being involved in the red area as well. Again, stop it, Michael Carter fanboys, with your goal line carries today. It's not something that's going to continue being a factor going forward. Najee Harris's offense cannot move the ball. This team, you can make two arguments here. I'll start with the counter argument to what I'm about to say. The first theory of thought here is that you're trailing 38-3. Literally, I took Pittsburgh at plus 14, having respect for Mike Tomlin in what feels like a college football spread today in terms of my sports betting for Sunday picks here. If you would have told me I would have had to take Pittsburgh plus 30-5 to cover the spread against Buffalo this week, I would have scoffed and laughed in your face. Now, again, the first theory of thought here, getting back to things, is that you obviously can make the argument that at 38-3, or excuse me, I think I said 38-5. It was 38-3. They were 35-point losers of that game. At that point, when you're trailing 38-3, you have no choice but to throw the football. Like, you don't have the option to run the ball anymore. And when that's the case, they're going to pin their ears back, this being Buffalo's front seven. They're going to get after the quarterback, and the secondary players are going to play incredibly conservative. They're not going to play uber aggressive. They're going to sit back, let you catch passes underneath, and make you really work for your drives here. And for a rookie quarterback, that's a tough thing to ask. They want to push the ball downfield. They want to make big plays, and they want to be the star of the show. And doing that, they weren't able to move the ball or make plays. Then there's the other side of thought here, which is my side of thought, is that you had an entire half of football against a Case Keenum-led team. Josh Allen sat out, halfway through the third quarter? I don't know. Game didn't come on red zone very much after the fact that Josh Allen was benched, of course, because it was such a blowout. I wonder if local stations literally turned it off and put something else on, like we saw from Kansas City and Arizona week 1. You've got all of that time, all of that clock, and you're telling me in that horrid of a negative game script, you gave me 3 points, and I believe those 3 points came in the first quarter when that game actually looked like it was going to be somewhat close for the day, and Pittsburgh was putting up a viable fight. So for me, with those negative game scripts, they're not going to get blown out like this every week. It's not something I'm trying to make to be the point here. But Najee Harris is not going to be able to be used like a workhorse back in the first 3 quarters of a game because of the fact that they're still going to be struggling. Their offensive line is still bad. They're still having incompetencies of running the football, having efficient play on the ground, and getting red zone opportunities. They're not getting in scoring range here. They're not making big enough plays down the sideline to get you those easy, quick drives. This is a much extended version of the problem I talked about earlier in Green Bay. You're not getting explosive passing plays. You're having to grind out long drives, but your run game is inefficient, so you can't set yourself ahead of the sticks on first and second down. And then you're really into a rut here, into a struggle, and having yourself these dilemmas offensively. And when you're not getting those carcass check down passes from Big Ben Roethlisberger out of the backfield and only have 13 targets in 5 weeks, averaging 2.6 targets per game, I'm sorry, Najee Harris, you're not putting up top 12 numbers. And that's a thought that I've moved on from here after this week. The next 2 are very simple takeaways. They shouldn't take very much time. I've been very passionate in my takes today, so hopefully you guys can respect and appreciate that here. Christian McCaffrey is the only fantasy relevant option in this Carolina Panthers offense. Now, for those of you that are hanging on to some hope here for DJ Moore, I'm gravely sorry, and I really regret to bring this information to the table here and obviously say things that are not kind about a very, very talented and player with a lot of potential here, but he has been so derailed by this Baker Mayfield-led offense. Now, Baker Mayfield was seen in a walking boot, so there's the potential that we may have a little bit of a shakeup at the quarterback position for this team moving forward. But again, a very, very difficult, ugly game script for Carolina where they, as predicted, trailed throughout the entirety of this game. DJ Moore just caught 4 of his 8 targets, 50% of that being the catch rate there, for 59 yards and 7 fantasy points. Like, if you're going to tell me in those matchups you're not putting up viable production, he has one game above 10 points in fantasy this season with a 6-target performance for 43 yards and a receiving touchdown against the New York Giants in week 2. Like, his ceiling so far has been 59 yards. Baker Mayfield does not offer him any vertical passing ability. He's had 1 double-digit target game this year. They literally cannot move and are incapable of moving the football when Christian McCaffrey is not slugging ahead here and pounding the rock at will game after game after game, play after play, drive after drive, series after series here. He's the only answer here. And that, again, is our 9th takeaway here, that Christian McCaffrey is the only fantasy-relevant Carolina Panther for 2022 fantasy football. And then finally here, Geno Smith, baby. He still hasn't written back. I can't believe it. I was astonished. He literally looks better than Russell Wilson. Like, what I'm saying sounds so crazy, and if I were to have said or had someone say that to me in the summer, I would have just literally turned the other cheek and totally ignored them. Like, it is ridiculous that this is the reality of the situation at play here. But it looks like, to this point, it's still very early. And for Broncos fans, especially, it's very early. You've got 7 more years of Russell Wilson, baby. So, Broncos country, let's freaking ride, man. But Geno Smith looks more athletic in the pocket. He gets out of and breaks sacks. He's making big-time throws downfield and arguably has equal, if not lesser, pre-Javonte Williams injury personnel in Seattle than what Russell has in Denver. Now, I get it. He's got 2 really relevant situations here at the wide receiver position with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. And I still, I guess, haven't really revealed my true takeaway here because I made this more about Geno Smith than I did my actual takeaway just because it's such a fun storyline situation here. But my one takeaway from this game was that I think Seattle might be very, very possibly capable of producing multiple relevant fantasy players at dependent positions per week. You've got guys like Kenneth Walker, who I think is going to come out and ball out without Rashad Penny, who again had a leg break today and is likely out for the rest of the season. You've got Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf putting up viable numbers. Again, DK Metcalf proves me wrong here. He gets a matchup one-on-one against Paulson Adebo. My whole take with the sits here this week was that Lattimore against larger physical wide receivers has himself a day. And, credit to Geno Smith. He ID'd the coverage, figured out who is guarding DK, makes some moves in the pocket, gets away from pressure, wide open, downfield, breaks a tackle, DK does, boom, touchdown. 2 deep shots downfield to Tyler Lockett up the middle of the seam. Could have banged his head on the goalpost, scores 2 TDs there. Like, he is getting the job done. We've seen him make plays for tight ends. Will Dissly's being remerged from the ashes. I think it was like 2018 when we last saw him catching touchdowns and making an impact for that team. So, Geno Smith, literally rolling here, producing fantasy relevant players at dependent positions that need his help to get the job done. My hat is tipped to you, Geno Smith. The Seahawks offense, back-to-back weeks, 35 or more points, went above 40 in week 4. So awesome stuff here. Again, that'll do it for today's video, you guys. I appreciate the heck out of you for sticking with me and, tuning into today's episode. If you're new around here, remember, click that subscribe button, turn the bell on before you head on out of today's episode, and check out some of the links in the description of today's episode. We've got a Twitter, an Instagram account, TikTok, all kinds of stuff, a community Discord server for you to hop into and interact with myself and other members watching the channel here. Super fun times. We're answering questions throughout the week, popping in there at least once per day for me at minimum, and checking in to see what you guys are up to. Of course, if you're an SFS Gold member, you can get access to that by scanning the QR code in the top right-hand corner of the screen. But I answer guaranteed responses to all DMs from Gold members in the Discord server. So all the more reason to go check that out. Check out our website, sizzlefantasy.com. Again, scan the QR code, subscribe, almost a 5K here. I'm super appreciative of you guys having a blast while doing this fantasy football coverage here throughout the NFL season. And I appreciate you guys again. I've said that a million times, but I really do. And this is really fun for me. So thank you guys so much. I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.